And as I was saying, I'm Rabbi Michael Birnholz from Temple B'nai Israel in Clearwater, Florida. And we've been doing these small congregation team ups for a number of years. This goes back to 2020 during the height of the pandemic. And in 2020, in April, May of 2020, when we saw that we wouldn't be able to have our regular typical observances of Shavuot, one of our colleagues, Rabbi Sarah Zober, reached out and asked if we wanted to create a virtual Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And from that first team up, there have been lots of them. We have gathered for Yom Kippur afternoon. We have done teaching of Ecclesiastes through Sukkot. We've had musings on the Megillah. We've had all kinds of different programs and different opportunities to teach and learn together. And even to this year, I think we had our fifth or sixth year of that virtual Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And Rabbi Neal Katz, who is here with us from Temple Bethel and Tyler, organized it this year, and we had so many different rabbis teaching and of our colleagues. We had so many different participants from all corners of the globe coming and joining us. And so it is wonderful that you are here with us. We are already over 43 logons, and realize that I have folks sitting here with me in my conference room. I know that there are Rabbi Jeff Goldwasser in Cranston, Rhode Island, has a number of his congregants joining with him. How wonderful it is that we are able to get, even as heavy as our hearts will be with Tisha B'Av, how incredible, how wonderful it is that we have this opportunity to gather in this way. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we have people from each coast. We have people from in between. We even have somebody from the Plymouth, Massachusetts congregation that is zooming in from New Zealand. And so how wonderful, how incredible it is. So I am going to turn it over to my colleague Rabbi Schicker, and give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Schicker. I'm at Temple B'nai Israel in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've been here since ordination in 2018, but I like to remind people that I'm actually and always will be a Houstonian, a Texan at heart. And I've been involved in these group opportunities from the beginning, and I'm very happy to be here. Rabbi Cantor, would you like to take us off next?
Hi, I'm Rabbi Cantor Jessica Lynn Fox, and I'm serving Temple of the High Country up in Boone, North Carolina. I know we have a couple congregants online tonight. It's very exciting. I've been here 1 month, and it's been a whirlwind, and I really appreciate the small congregations coming together and being able to put programs on that are a little hard for those of us who are more isolated. I think it's great to see everybody here tonight and sharing this time of reflection and prayer. So thanks for including me.
And Rabbi Mills.
Hi, my name is Rabbi Estelle Mills. I'm serving Congregation Beth Jacob in Plymouth, Massachusetts, America's hometown. I've been here for 5 years, and I've also been involved in these programs since the very beginning. That I did the first year, Michael and I did some joint, Rabbi Birnholz and I did some joint adult ed programs just between our two congregations when COVID was going on. And it was an opportunity to share our different talents with each other's congregations. So it's been a wonderful opportunity, all these joint Zoom programs.
And Rabbi Katz.
Hi, I am Rabbi Neal Katz, guitar queued up for a song in a few moments. And I am the rabbi here at Congregation Bethel in Tyler, Texas. I have some congregants on, and my in-laws, that's the Kissimmee piece. And this is my first and only job, so I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think I just started my 23rd year here. So straight from ordination to Tyler, and I've been in a small congregation ever since. So wonderful to be here.
And Rabbi Goldwasser.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Jeff Goldwasser. I serve Temple Sinai in Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm sitting in the chapel right now at Temple Sinai with a small but mighty number of our congregants who are here with us as well. Also, we have a couple of congregants who are joining from home online, and it's good to be here.
And so it is truly wonderful to have everybody together, to be able to make the most of this day of reflection, this night of vigil. And it's Tisha B'Av, and it's a strange one because in Judaism we always say that they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. And yet Tisha B'Av has a very, very different feel to it because it's that opportunity not to just jump into the eating, even though that in contrast to all of our different holidays, the Davka, this is one of our major fast days, alongside of Yom Kippur, which is for personal introspection. Here we have Tisha B'Av, which is all about our experiences of communal loss. And so as we are here tonight, we are also going to have a PowerPoint, a presentation that we'll use. And don't worry, the screen's about to go black. Do not panic. That is the actual presentation. And it will be an opportunity for us to use audiovisual as part of our observance together. As we are together, and this is the end of Shabbat. So Shabbat is coming to an end. I am going to light a flame to acknowledge that it's the end of Shabbat, that there is a transition. We are leaving this time of holiness for Shabbat and entering something different. It is a Yom Tov. It is a day where you're not supposed to be doing your regular work, and yet it's not the same kind of celebration of Shabbat. It's not full of sweetness. It's not full of joy. One of the practices of Tisha B'Av is to sit on low chairs, to feel that sadness, to weep at the losses of our people, which we'll hear more. But I'm going to kindle a light. And I realize this is not on camera yet. And so I have this olive oil lamp that I use at all kinds of different times. One of our times we use it the most actually is around Hanukkah, that we use this as part of a light labyrinth program. So as you see this light, as you also see the blessing for kindling fire, I offer these words: Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei ma'orei ha'esh. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, creator of the light of the fire. And so you see this flame as it is here. And we also realize that we are separating Shabbat from this day of Tisha B'Av, from this 9th day of Av. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. We're not entering chol. This is not every day, but we acknowledge the separation of Shabbat from this day of Tisha B'Av. We don't use our typical of wine or of spices, but as we extinguish this candle of Havdalah and we end Shabbat, we turn to this day of Tisha B'Av. It is a custom to light a Yizkor candle on special days of memory to restore the light of those whose lives have been destroyed on this day of Jewish tragedy, if even but for a second. But we separate this night of memory from others. We refrain from sparking that light. We take time to experience darkness and sadness of this day. At the end of this, and so as we are going through the service, if you would like to take out a candle, if you would like to get a battery-powered light, you can also just have your cell phone and turn on the flashlight. At the end of the service, what we're going to do is kindle that flame, turn on that light, turn out your ceiling lights, so that when we finish at the end, all we will have is those flames of each of us together. And so as we are here, as we have finished Shabbat, but we have entered Tisha B'Av, I offer these words. On this day of Tisha B'Av, above all, we remember that we are those who have seen desolation, the crafted stones shattered to rubble, the holy places filled with trash, the sacred vessels debased from informers higher, the love labors of artisans endowed by heaven melted down for the wages of the courtesan, battered babes and savage elders. The temple became a den of jackals and thieves. The shackled princes of Judah endlessly trudged the blazing plains of Babylon, bearing in sacks sewn from Torah scroll strips a burden of rock and rubble. Our pain is not just from the destruction of the temple, it is an agony of exile, of losing home, a place of comfort, familiarity, and history. And so I share the screen with Rabbi Katz as he offers these words.
By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. And there on the trees we hung up our lyres, for our captors asked us there for songs and our tormentors for amusement. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How could we sing a song of the eternal here on alien soil? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, and my tongue stick to my palate. If I cease to think of you, and I do not keep Jerusalem in my memory, even at my happiest hour. The waters of Babylon.
And I read this responsively with my congregants that are here with me in person. At Tisha b'Av is not just a day of sadness, for the first temple. It is told on Tisha b'Av these events occurred, we remember and do not forget.
Help us to remember and not forget.
It is decreed upon that retrograde generation of the wilderness that they would not enter the land of Israel.
Help us to remember and not.
The Temple of Solomon was put to the torch.
Help us to remember and not forget.
The second temple was destroyed, and the Temple Mount was plowed. And the words of Jeremiah came to pass, Zion will be plowed as a field.
Help us to remember and not forget.
This is the day of the fall of Beitar, which ended the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 of this common era.
Help us to remember and not forget.
On this day, there was a pogrom in the city of York, and the Jews from England were expelled.
Help us to remember and not forget.
On this Tisha b'Av, the Jews of the Golden Spain were expelled by the forces of darkness of yet further exile, and the divine unity was further sundered.
Help us to remember and not forget.
On this 9th of Av, the First World War began. The great burning was still to come.
Help us to remember and not forget.
And so I share the screen with Rabbi Cantor Fox. As she offers these words of the beginning of Lamentations. And Lamentations is about the Megillah of Tisha b'Av. And with these words, it is about the destruction of the first temple. But these words of Eicha certainly set the stage for all of the destructions of Tisha b'Av.
Eicha yashva vadai, ha'ir rabat yam, hayta ke'almana, Rabati vagoyim, sarati bamrinot, hayta lamas, vachotivka balayla, vadimata al lechaya, ein la menachem mikolo haveha, Korea Bagduva Hayula Leoivim Galta Yehuda Meoni Umerova Voda Yashva Vagoyim Lo Matza Manoach Korod Feha Hisiguha Ben Hamitzarim Darkei Zion Avelot Mi beli ba'emoed Kol she'areha shomemin Kohaneha nenachim Betuloteha nugot Vehimarla Hayutzareha lerosh Oy v'hashalu ki Adonai hoga aro pishaha olaleha al hushevi livnei tzar vayetze mi batzion kol hadara hayu sareha Kayalim lo matzu mir'eh Vayelchu velo choach lifnei rodev Zakra Yerushalayim Yamei hanya umrudeha Kol machamudeha Asher hayu mimekedem Binfol Amab Yatzar V'yein nozer la Ra'uha hayu Ra'uha hayu mimekedem Binfol Amab Yatzar V'yein nozer la Ra'u tzarim Zachaku al mishpateha.
Grief, loss, devastation, distress, shock, numbness, denial, apathy, disorganization, confusion, searching, yearning, anxiety, panic, fear, resentment, jealousy, anger, hate, blame, terror, rage, sadness, depression, guilt, regret, isolation. All these feelings and more we'll experience in our lives. We often find ways to distract ourselves from the full depth of our emotions. Today, we open the floodgates and sit with those feelings we would rather avoid. We can make space enough inside all of us to hold all of these different emotions. Today, we take the time to get to know how we react to these feelings, how we redirect them on to others. When we open up to grief and sit in the darkness, we learn to be better human beings and light the way for others. Help us open not just to private grief, but to communal grief for our people and the suffering in the world. May we learn this Tisha b'Av, that finding rock bottom can become a foundation for strength and growth, as we say, Amen. And as I stop the share, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague Estelle Mills, I think, and give her an opportunity to teach us on this day of Tisha b'Av.
Thank you. I thought this evening is going to be it's a heavy topic, but I thought I'd start with something a little bit lighter. And although many of us were probably familiar with the joke, if you weren't, Rabbi Birnholz has already shared with you the joke I was going to share to begin with, namely that they tried to kill us, they failed, so now let's eat. But I would like to share that even, and especially in times of mourning, we look for things that comfort us. And one of the things that always brings comfort in many times is food. That joke that both of us have now shared is attributed to the comedian Alan King. And it highlights the recurring theme of survival against persecution that underlies many of our holidays, such as Passover, Purim, and Hanukkah. That joke, though, is more than just a joke. It recognizes our people's resilience and survival. It turns our difficult past into a reason to gather to eat and express gratitude for our continued existence, especially in times of tragedy. For even when our enemies succeeded in murdering thousands of Jews, which we commemorate with memorial days like Yom HaShoah and tonight's observance of Tisha b'Av, we have developed foods that help us to do that remembering and highlight our resilience as a people and our perennial attitude that this too is going to pass and that we must continue to have faith in God and hope in the future of Judaism. So for Tisha b'Av, this joke was slightly changed or tinkered with to say, the Babylonians and the Romans hated us. They tried to kill us. They succeeded in killing many of us. So instead of eating, let's fast. But yet the foods that we eat to begin and end our fast have just as much symbolism as the foods we eat on our other holy days. So before I get into the specific foods and what they're symbolic for that are associated with the nights before and after Tisha b'Av, I wanted to share some reasons about why food is so important in Judaism. As we probably know, the smells and the tastes that our parents and grandparents, and hopefully those of us who are lucky enough to know our great-grandparents, knew and shared with us at holidays, are part of our heritage and community, which binds us together. Arguments about the best recipes for chicken soup or whether matzo balls should be hard or soft are important because food evokes the memories that have kept our tradition alive. It is what is most remembered about our holiday celebrations. More than why we celebrate the holiday, we remember the smell and the taste and sitting around the table, eating with our family and friends. Some say we are obsessed as Jews by food. For think about it, the Torah not only gave us the laws of kashrut, which regulates what we are allowed to eat on a daily basis, but just about every story of our patriarchs and matriarchs is full of food references. Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden because of eating forbidden fruit. Cain killed his brother Abel because God favored Abel's offering of fat from an animal over his brother's offering of fruit of the soil. Isaac favored Esau because he did not eat of the venison. And Jacob offered to give Esau a bowl of lentil soup in exchange for his birthright. Jacob and his sons traveled to Egypt, predominantly to buy grain because of the great famine in Canaan. And Joseph is famous for interpreting the dreams of the baker. There's very few stories that do not touch upon food. The story of Passover, as we know, centers on how we had to leave Egypt in a hurry and take the unleavened bread with us. In the desert, we were fed manna for 40 years. And even Israel is referred to as the land of milk and honey. Food is everywhere in our tradition and in our Torah, And food punctuates the joy, the togetherness, and also the sadness of days like today, because it affected our ancestors and it helped us to form our Jewish memories. We may be more known as the people of the book, but we are just as much the people of the food. There is no way we can practice Judaism religiously or culturally without the foods. Passover is not Passover without matzah, and even Yom Kippur is not Yom Kippur without fasting, which is having to do with foods in a way. With so many references into foods, we are taught that even something so mundane as eating must be made holy, which is why we bless our food before we eat it. It was, though, our forefathers and mothers, our ancestors, our grandparents, who helped, and parents and anyone who came before us and celebrated the holidays with us, who helped us appreciate the food and the recipes, and nurtured our love for food, which in turn made Judaism much more attractive because the food was both delicious and memorable. And even in death and mourning, we have foods associated with it. Symbolism has developed around what foods we eat to begin or to break fast, what foods we bring to a house of mourning. In grief, there are foods as well. Tisha b'Av is one of 6 public fasts in Judaism, 2 major fasts and 4 minor. And just in case you want to know which are which, the 2 major fasts are Yom Kippur and Tisha b'Av, and the minor fasts are the fast of Esther, the fast of Gedalia, the fast of Tevet, and the 17th of Tammuz. And our tradition connects symbolic dishes and customs that help us deal with our grief on all of these fast days, whether it's personal grief, as when we're observing a yurtzeit or a yisker or a funeral, or whether it is communal grief, such as Tisha b'Av. Meals of condolence are served to us by others as part of our healing process when we grieve, a custom that is centuries old. Tisha b'Av, then, is our scheduled yurtzeit as a community for all of our losses as a communal group. For some, this mourning period begins 3 weeks beforehand, on the 17th day of Tammuz. This time is called Be'in HaMitzorim, and those who observe it abstain from alcohol, eating meat, and attending joyous celebrations such as weddings. For the full 17 days before Tisha b'Av, no meat is eaten. And on Tisha b'Av, the meat restrictions carry over through the following day, the end of the following day, to reflect how long the temple continued to burn after its destruction. For this reason, we typically only eat dairy and vegetarian dishes before the fast starts and when we break the fast. The meal before the fast is called Seudah HaMafseket. It typically includes a round challah, a hard-boiled egg, and water. The round foods, as we know from Passover and other holidays and from times of funerals, symbolize the cycle of life, that it continues on and goes in a circle. Some traditions involve eating this bread and egg while sitting on the floor for Tisha b'Av, symbolizing mourning. And lentils and other round foods are also associated with mourning. There's some differences between the foods depending on Ashkenazi or Sephardi or Mizrahi tradition, just as there are with all holidays. So for Ashkenazi Jews, the food is often a simple dry bread, and sometimes it is even dipped in ashes before it is eaten. The hard-boiled egg represents not just the cycle of life and mourning, it also represents the hardening of the egg. The hardening of the egg through cooking also represents a need to stiffen and steady ourselves when a death occurs. The fact that it remains fully sealed as a hard-boiled egg with the shell reminds us how important it is to stay solitary and undistracted from our grief during this period. And round pastries like bagels, which are thought of Jewish comfort food, are also a staple for Tisha b'Av and other times of grief. For Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, lentils are the main traditional food for mourning, symbolizing closure and reflection. and other legumes are also eaten. Because most beans, like the lentil, have no eye or opening, symbolizing the mourner's state. The no eye symbolizes that the person who has died can no longer see or be seen. The beans without a mouth either remind the mourners that there is no need to speak when we are in a state of deep sorrow. The Moroccans eat the lentils with rice in a traditional dish. And then rather than bagels, Sephardic Jews eat kayak, which is a ring-shaped pita that is sprinkled with sesame seeds. Kishori is an Egyptian layered lentil and rice dish with noodles and fava beans and chickpeas covered in tomato sauce. And of course, rather than the bagel, the Sephardi and Ashkenazi Jews in Israel today, they eat round burakers, spinach or cheese-filled pastries. So even though it is a fast day, we still have food associated. And even though they tried to kill us, and they did succeed or nearly succeed in killing millions, we fast, but we also eat to remember that life does go on. And even in times of great grief, it is not the end. The food gives us resilience and nurturing to keep us going on. And we have for over 3,000 years.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Mills, for sharing that, for reminding us of that really incredible contrast. And if you all give me just a moment, as we hear that piece, that will then bring us in. And Rabbi Schicker, if you would like to pull up your feed. And we hear chapter 2 of Lamentations.
Echa ya'iv ba'apo, Adonai et bat Zion, hishilich mishamayim eretz, tiferet Yisrael, velo zahar hadom raglav bayom apo. Bila Adonai velo chamal, et kol naot, Yaakov haras be'evrato, miv tzarei vat Yehuda, higia la'aretz chilel mamlacha v'sarecha. Gada behari af kol keren Yisrael, hishiv achor yamino mipnei oyev, v'yiv'ar ba'avkov ke'esh lech ba, ochla saviv. Darach kashto ke'oyev nitzav yamino katzar, v'ya'aharog kol mahamade, ayin ba'ohel bat Zion, shafach ka'esh chamato. Haya Adonai ke'oyev, bila Yisrael, bila kol armanoteha, shichet miv-tzarav, v'yerev bavat Yehuda, ta'aniya ba'aniya, v'yachmos kagan suko, shichet moado, shikach Adonai, b'tzion moed, v'shabbat v'yin atz, b'tza'am apo melech v'chohen.
The Mishnah says senseless hatred knocked the temple down. Not the Romans with their siege, engines, or not only them, but our ancestors too, who slipped into petty backbiting, ignored Shabbat for how to offer their hearts. We're no better, we who secretly know we're right, holier than they. We who roll our eyes and patronize, who check email even on the holiest of days, who forget that a prayer is more than a tune, more than words on a page. In Oslo, parents weep, and we're too busy arguing motive to comfort them. Across the Middle East, parents weep, and we're too busy arguing borders to comfort them. In our nursing homes, parents weep, shuddering and alone, and we're too busy. Even now, what sanctuaries, what human hearts are damaged and burned, while we snipe at each other or insist we're not responsible or look away. And so I am going to do a two-part teaching. I'm going to block it around a little bit. By popular demand, I think everybody was asking me to share the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. In my congregation, this is the story that every one of my students has studied with me. My congregation hears it every Tisha b'Av, and so we're going to go through it again. Even if you know it, this is a critical story for us to hear each Tisha b'Av, and it's connected to the text that Rabbi Barenblatt just shared in the poem. So this is my AI-generated image in the style of Chagall of the Kamsa Bar Kamsa argument. So part one of what I'm going to read, I'm going to do a quick teaching, and it's just this phrase. All I want to do is have this in the back of our mind, although it won't matter until part two. For those of you who don't know this, Marit Ayin is how things appear to the eye. In other words, sometimes the rabbis of the Talmud would make laws and decisions based on how they appear rather than the actual, Torah, mitzvah, or a law. The example that I use is somebody who needs to use the restroom in Jerusalem, and they're an Orthodox Jew. So they want to walk into McDonald's, or McDonald's is not kosher, but into a non-kosher restaurant to use the restroom. Right? So you can deduce one of two things. Either they're walking in there and therefore the place is kosher, because that's they're Orthodox, and therefore it's okay for you to enter. Incorrect. Or that they're going in there to eat non-kosher food. Also incorrect. In both situations, you've deduced the wrong piece of information. So the new law is never walk foot into a non-kosher restaurant. So again, I'm not teaching that. I'm just saying that is how we sometimes arrive. The way things are perceived matters. And this, of course, functions for kosher and so forth. So that's going to matter more. But what I want to do first is share the story. If you've heard it, great. If not, I'm going to read it as quickly as possible. We are in the Talmud, and we are in Gittin. So this is interesting that it pops up in a tractate of the Talmud connected to divorce decrees, but that's not really pertinent. And we've already read, just from the poem from Rabbi Barenblatt, that it wasn't the Romans who destroyed the second temple. Of course it was, right? Just like the Babylonians destroyed the first temple. But the writer of Echa that we're singing tonight, the writer of Lamentations, didn't blame the Babylonians. They weren't happy with them. They blamed the Jews. We were the reason why the first temple was destroyed, because we strayed from God's ways. That's what the prophet Jeremiah says in the book of Lamentations. And so with the destruction of the second temple, it's now up to the rabbis to explain why the second temple was destroyed. And their version of it is this story. So we know the Roman piece of the history. Let's focus on the way in which we tell the story. And it's going to be in two parts. So the Gemara says, the Talmud says, Jerusalem was destroyed on account of, I'm going to add parenthetically, the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. It's unfortunate because Kamsa does nothing wrong in here. And just so you know, if you've never studied with me, everything that's in bold is actual translation of what's on the Hebrew on the right. The non-bold is the way Sefaria does editorial comments. It just makes it read easier. Okay. So what's the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa? This is straight from the Talmud. There was a certain man, and they don't name him, so I'm going to give him a name because it confuses the story otherwise. Let's call him Joseph. So there's a guy named Joseph, and he has a friend named Kamsa, an enemy named Bar Kamsa, presumably the son of Kamsa, but clearly that was his enemy. Now Joseph once made a large feast, and he says to his servant, "Go, bring me my friend Kamsa." The servant goes and mistakenly brought him Bar Kamsa. In the movie version of this is where the minor chord comes in. Dun, dun, dun. It's right. This is where the plot starts to thicken. We get the wrong invitation sent. And the man who was hosting the feast, Joseph, the made-up name, he comes and he sees Bar Kamsa sitting at the feast. And Joe says to Bar Kamsa, "This man is the enemy of that man." In other words, what are you doing here, enemy? What do you want here? Get up and leave. Arise and leave. And by the way, the translation here is very soft. Arise and leave. No. He was forcibly pushing him out. He was furious that this guy showed up. And if you were Bar Kamsa, by the way, maybe this was an olive branch. You knew that you were enemies. Maybe the invitation was somehow an olive branch. So for whatever reason Bar Kamsa shows, Joseph is furious. He says, "Get out." Bar Kamsa says, "Look, I've already come. let me stay here. I'll give you money for whatever I eat and drink. And then parenthetically, the editors say, just don't embarrass me by sending me out. And the host says to him, no. We can imagine screaming here, right? It's not just a soft no. It's a screaming no. You must leave. Bar Kamsa says, look, I'll pay you for half the feast. Just don't send me away. If I was Joseph at this point, I'd say, now you're talking, right? Now we're talking, right? No, but I'll pay for half the feast. And he says, no, get out. He says, look, I'll pay you for the entire feast. Just let me stay. Don't embarrass me. This is a moment. People are watching. And the host said, no, you must leave. And finally, the host took Bar Kamsa by his hand, stood him up, and took him out. Again, a very soft translation. I imagine more grabbing him by the scruff and ejecting him from the actual party. After having been cast out from the party, Bar Kamsa then says to himself, since there were people sitting around, since there were sages sitting there, in this picture, these are the sages hanging out, since the sages were sitting there and they didn't protest the actions of Joseph, although they saw how I was being humiliated, I must learn from it that they were okay, that they were content with what happened. I will therefore go and inform against them to the king. So this is a subsection we have called Hell hath no fury like Bar Kamsa scorned. Right? This is the moment in which he just says, I will get back at those punks and that feast and the way I was humiliated. Because it wasn't just between me and him. It was the way in which the other people did not engage. So he's going to go tell them. So he goes to the emperor of the Roman emperor. And he says, look, the Jews have rebelled against you. Or another way to read this is, the Jews are planning to rebel against you. So if we're going to put this in a timeline, we're in the years probably 66 at this moment. Did this actually happen? Probably not. But we know that that's when the war starts. Bar Kamsa goes to the Roman emperor and says, the Jews are going to rebel. And he says, come on. Who says that this is the case? What are you talking about? He says, I'll prove it. Send them an offering to be brought in honor of the government and see whether they will sacrifice it. So we can learn at this moment, could a foreign government or a non-Jew offer a sacrifice up on the Holy Temple? Of course. And the Levites up there and the Kohanes, and they would stand up there and they would oversee it because these were peace offerings or relationship offerings between nations. So it was completely valid. So what's the setup here? Well, the setup is the emperor agrees with this little ruse. In other words, I'm going to send an offering. If they do offer it up on the altar, all's good. If they don't offer it, I know something's a brewing. So this is where Bar Kamsa gets in the middle. The emperor sends him with a 3-year-old calf, and while Bar Kamsa was coming to the calf with the temple, he made a blemish on the calf's upper lip. Some say the blemish was on the eyelids, like right here, like a little cut. A place where, according to us, halakha, it's a blemish, but according to them, Gentiles, it's not a blemish. Now, this little parenthetical reading, and this is on Sepharia, I don't love, but here it goes. Therefore, when Bar Kamsa brought the animal to the temple, the priests would not sacrifice it since it was blemished, but they also couldn't explain this satisfactorily to the Gentile authorities who did not consider it to be blemished. That's outside the Talmud. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Look, all you do is you say to the Gentile, oh, I'm sorry, we can't offer that up here because of the blemish. That should be the entirety of the conversation. But what we know is that you don't give God, and Adonai, you don't give God blemished items for sacrifice. You don't bring rotten fruit. You bring the first fruit. You bring unblemished animals. And so this was all a setup to prevent them from actually being able to sacrifice up on the Temple Mount this offering, and therefore instigating. We're going to get to that point. So the blemish notwithstanding, the sages, the Levites and the rabbis up there, they went ahead and thought, let's go ahead and sacrifice it due to the imperative to maintain peace with the government. So when Rabbi Schicker and Rabbi Birnholz and I are presented with this horrible dilemma, what do? Do we sacrifice a blemished animal, which is a no-no? Or do we just gonna do it? Otherwise, we may incur the wrath of the Roman army. Let's pick the path of peace and security at this particular moment. And that's what they decided to do. And then part 2 will come in just a moment. Rabbi Schicker, are you chanting?
Am I reading next, Birnholz?
Oh,
I was
yeah.
waiting for him to put up the translation for
Oh,
everybody.
sorry.
No, you're good.
Did it go up?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Lo ki lo yiznach leolam Adonai. Ki im hoga v'richam kerov hasadav. Ki lo ina milibo v'yage b'nei ish. Lidake tachat raglav kol asire eretz. Lehatot mishpat gaver neged pnei elyon. La'avet adam berivo Adonai lo ra'ah. Mi ze amor. Vatehi Adonai lo tziva. Mi pi elyon lo teitse haraot v'hatov. Ma yit onein adam chai gever al chatav.
The earth shakes to the very foundations. Fire and water unleashed fury. Creator of the universe, whose name is love and compassion, and whose essence is wisdom, divinity, purpose, we cry in anguish. We are submerged in doubt and fear. Help us to hold the suffering of the world and offer a compassionate hand. God of mercy, be gentle with our pain and doubt. Help us as we struggle with confusion and loss, darkness, cold, fear, hunger, thirst. Protect us. Creator of the universe, we offer gratitude for the blessings, for survival, for the graciousness of strangers, and for heroic acts that abound. Grant us strength, resilience, fortitude, hope, faith.
So as we continue back with our Kamsa Bar Kamsa story, I'm going to screen share here. Apologize. I forgot how to work Zoom for a second. So, all right. So where we left off is the rabbis or the sages. And by the way, I'm as confused as you might be that sages, Levites, Cohens, doesn't matter. The leadership community up there on the Temple Mount, they realized, look, we know what's going on. We know we're being set up to upset the Roman government by accepting this blemished animal, which we're going to reject. But you know what? We're going to do it for the sake of peace. And now we get to meet what I call the punk of the story. As bad as it is, this is the guy, Zechariah ben Avkolus. So he's up there and he says to this little group of people getting ready to offer a blemished sacrifice, look, if you do that, people will say that blemished animals may be sacrificed on the altar. Right? In other words, you're going to confuse the people out there, Marat Ayin, you're going to confuse their eye. They're going to say, wait a minute, I guess there's a scenario where people can offer blemished animals on the altar. You don't want to do that and confuse the wider people. So now he tied their hands. So they can't offer the blemished animal because of Zechariah being so concerned about how it would appear out there. So what do? Your hands are tied. You're not going to offer this thing. You know you're going to upset the Roman government. What's the next logical step? They don't want Bar Kamsa going back to the Roman emperor to tell him what happened. So what's the next? Let's kill Bar Kamsa. Right? So the sages say, look, if we don't sacrifice it, then we have to stop Bar Kamsa from going back and reporting this. So the sages say, you know what? Let's kill him so that he wouldn't go and speak against them. Right? These are our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. And by the way, the same rabbi, Zechariah ben Avkolus, the one who pulled this Marat Ayin thing before, does it again. He says, hold on a second. If you kill him, people are going to think, they're going to see that, and they're going to say, well, maybe someone who brings a blemished animal for a sacrifice, that's the punishment. Also incorrect. Right? So he is so strict with halakha, he's so strict with law, that he doesn't want to confuse the people out there.
We don't care what the Romans think. We're going to let him go. We're going to let Bar Kamsa go back and whine to the emperor about us because he set us up. Well, let's kill him. Well, we don't want to do that because we don't want people to think incorrectly that that's the punishment. So we're getting close to the end here. As a result, what did they do? Nothing. And therefore, they didn't offer the sacrifice. Bar Kamsa's slander was accepted by the authorities. Consequently, in 66, the war between the Jews and the Romans began. The end of the story says, Rabbi Yochanan, a later rabbi, says, the excessive humility, and I want to focus on that word humility. Don't love that word. I think it's piety, right? The overzealousness of Rabbi Zechariah. The excessive piety of Zechariah destroyed our temple, burned our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land. Right? And if we go back to the top, it says, the Gemara explains, it was destroyed on account of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. So through this weird soap opera, it snowballs out of control. Hell hath no fury like Bar Kamsa scorned. This is a petty argument that it gets to the level of authorities, and the payback is going to be instigating a war, and the rabbis, because of the piety and the hands being tied by Zechariah, ultimately, what did they do? They lost the temple. So again, if you ask a historian why the temple was destroyed, Romans and so forth. But if you ask the Jews why was the second temple destroyed, we did it to ourselves. And the phrase that we use is sinat chinam. Senseless hatred, causeless hatred, pettiness, right? It was in their generation. It's in our generation. And this is what we push back against on Tisha B'Av. Of course, we're crying about the walls. We're crying about the destruction. We're talking about national destruction. We're talking about 2,000 years of exile. But we're also talking about an internal destruction because we didn't get along with one another. And it could have been avoided at so many different moments. That distance between a healthy, national, independent country and national collapse is very tenuous, right? And it really rests on our ability to get along with one another. So here on Tisha B'Av, we hear about Kamsa, the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, and we pledge to be better than in our next generation.
Devak Lashon, Yonek El Chiko, Batsama Olalim, Sha'alu Lechem, Pores Ein Lachem. Ha'ochlim Lema'adanim, Nashamo Bachutzot, Ha'emunim, Ale Tola, Chibku Ashpatom. V'yigdal Avon, Bat Ami, Me Hatat, Sodom, Hachabukha Chamo Raga Velo Halu Va Yadayim.
A psalm of protest before the broken gates of conscience, sung in ashes and sackcloth, when lies are held as truth, when citizens go blind before despots, when judges are appointed to oppress and police do the bidding of clerics. O twisted logic, O deceit of reign, how will we walk the path to renewal, cluttered with the remnants of trust? How will we walk the paths of peace, cluttered with the ruins of treachery? Deliver us from the captains of war, from the leaders who would rewrite the past and destroy the future. Let the upright rise to lead, and the sounds of joy replace these of lamentations. And so as we are together on this Tisha B'Av, and as you see, I will talk a little bit about Kriya and Tikkun, and inside and out. And this is a little bit complicated because I want to do a lot of things all at once. And the challenge is that each one of them really takes, the whole point is to really stop and feel. And so Tikkun and Kriya, so Kriya and Tikkun, if you have been to a Jewish funeral or a moment of mourning, When we hear of a loved one dying, you're supposed to tear a piece of fabric. It's the break of the tapestry of life. It's the breaking of our heart. There is something powerful in the feeling of that act of tearing. But what I then teach is, how do you repair a piece of fabric? You take a needle and thread, and stitch by stitch, you would close up the fabric. You would do that act of tikkun, that act of repair. Of course, you don't do that with something you've done kriya for a funeral, but metaphorically, what are you doing? You're weaving the thread of somebody's memory into your own life's experience in some really incredible ways. And so I want to do this act of kriya and tikkun. We've been doing a lot of kriya, right? We have been reading these different sections of Eicha, of Lamentations. We have been hearing some of these different stories from my colleagues. We have been hearing these poems, and each one of them has some of that brokenness, that shatteredness in it. The challenge I have is I have a limited amount of time to teach. And I'm thinking of that story. There's a story in Leviticus of Aaron the priest, the brother of Moses. When his two sons, Nadav and Abihu, die in the tent of meeting, Moses comes out and says that they have died. And the Torah just says, Vayadoma Haron, Aaron was silent. We don't know how long he was silent for. We know he was feeling all of that pain. We know he was stopped moving, stopped talking. It's also, think about it, if you've been to Hebrew school, you know the word for silence is sheket, as in sheket b'vakasha. Stop talking, the teacher needs to talk. This is a different root, that daled mem mem. It's a different kind of silence. I would love to be able to do that kind of silence, that kind of vigil, so we can say, how do I really feel the pain, the loss, the destruction, the rubble of Tisha B'Av? But in this nature, I don't have that, but I want you to be thinking about that. How do we get ourselves to stop and feel before we jump into the tikkun? But of course, because of the nature of this day, I do want to give you a couple of routes to tikkun inside and out. But first, just a little bit more of the lament of the keynote of Tisha B'Av. And again, I'm going to ask the folks that are in the room with me to be responsive. On this night, my children weep and wail. On this night, my temple was destroyed. My palace is burned down. So let the whole house of Israel moan in my grief, and bewail the burning which the Lord has kindled.
On this night, my children weep and wail.
A lament for the temple of Jerusalem. Woe to us, for we have sinned. We have missed the mark. We have lost our connection to God, for God has lost us. Let us sit alone and weep. For these I weep, for the palace that is forsaken.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For my temple that is destroyed.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the decrees that are broken.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the ark of the covenant which was stolen.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the hills of Judah that were denied to us.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the hot indignation that prevails.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the shame that has become great.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the precious stones that are split.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the children that are scattered.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the studies that have ceased.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the kings that are rejected.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the noble ones that have vanished.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the princes that are oppressed.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the poor that are ashamed.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the redeemed that are exiled.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the devoted ones that are separated for God.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the near ones that have been pulled away.
Let us sit alone and weep.
For the peace offerings that are cast off.
Let us sit alone and weep.
And so part of this is that on Tisha B'Av, can we make some time for ourselves to stop and feel it? Can we feel our mortality? Can we feel how we are finite? Can we feel our imperfections? That we are pinched, that we are stuck, that we are challenged. This is part, to me, is so much of Tisha B'Av, Can we feel our brokenness and vulnerability in these words, in these prayers, in these songs, in these teachings? And so, as I said, inside and out, there's a beautiful quote by Hillel, Im enani li mili, if I'm not for myself, who is for me? And so first, I do want us to be thinking, again, if we're talking about that pain, how do we feel that pain personally about how we move through the world and the challenges that mortality and loss? And immediately I kept coming back to Unatana Tokef, to this very powerful prayer we say together on the High Holy Days, on Yomim Noraim, and yet how it is a personal challenge to us. Can we feel finite? Can we feel mortal? Can we measure our own life in this world and mortality? And so we see here on Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises and crests. We merge, the sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of a braided candle. And this is the translation from Mishkan HaNefesh. We contemplate this new year, and we know some will love and some of us will die. Some will die young and some very old. Some by fire or water and some by fire. Some by sword and some by beast. Some by hunger, some by thirst, some by plague and some by earthquake. Some by stoning and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease and some will feel restless. And that going back and forth, just as we are thinking about what is at stake for us in the world, how do we look out with empathy and our own, how do we feel it in ourselves, those challenges of wondering what the year has in store for us, of looking around and being able to feel our own brokenness. And it was that response, it was that from Unatana Tokef, but the response. If we're talking about ourselves and what do we encounter, how do we feel it in this time and space, what is the response? Let us make whole the broken shards, green and thick the withering grass. Let wind fill us with urgency of life. Let dreams give birth to justice and goodness. And even in the midst of our pain, how do we respond? Utshuva, utfilah, utstaka. Through the return to the right path, through prayer, through acts of righteousness and justice. And so repenting, turning ourselves around, doing acts of prayer, meditation, reflection, and doing acts of tzedakah in the world. If this is something that is personal for us, can we see, and this is part of that Kamsa and Bar Kamsa story we're seeing, that just as we know the Romans destroyed the second temple, the Babylonians destroyed the first temple, we also see from Rabbi Katz that challenge of what is our responsibility if we see brokenness in the world, what do we need to do to work on ourselves? And the second is that other piece of if I am for my own self, what am I? That is the second piece of Hillel. And I just want to share this story that is from the Moth Radio Hour. Some of you might be very passionate listeners like myself. You might have heard the story. It came from an episode called Oh Brother that was recent, but I think it's from like 2014 or 15. As I'm looking at myself, there's also this powerful act of looking out, and the way that I respond to the brokenness is not what I do for myself, but what I do for the people in the world around me. This is Om Churi and his brother Raj. And when Raj was 5 and Om was like 12, their father dies. And Om's response, as they're sitting in the funeral home, he sees how crushed his brother is. And what does he do? He goes out and he gets, and you can see that Raj is wearing a silly hat. He goes out and he gets what he describes as a clown hat and a clown nose. And he says, we're getting out of the funeral home. We're going to go out for ice cream. Everyone's really, really angry with him. How dare he do this? Here's the son, his father's died, and he's taking his brother out for ice cream. And he's like, no, I saw my brother brokenhearted. What could I do in that place of so much pain just to make him feel that the world might be able to go on? And so he does this for his brother. And you see the reason I did that was because my brother was in love with these street side vendors who could dress up as clowns and bring ice cream and balloons. In my case, it was pretty evident to me what was right was this 5-year-old kid laugh. What was wrong was the social norms of him sitting in a funeral home in mourning. But over the course of the next 18 years, I realized that me and my brother promised this really super cool, clownish bond, where one of us was struggling, the other person would always bring exactly 2 clown hats. It was our way of saying to each other, hey, the world hasn't ended yet, and if it's not going to end, because I'm always going to have your back. And this is the part of the story that just grabbed my heart. Fast forward to 18 years, about 7 weeks ago. I'm not sure I should be talking about this, but my world came crashing down. But I really thought I'd seen everything that life has to throw at me, but it did not. 3 of the people I loved most in my entire world, I lost them in a single week. And this is the part as I talk about Vayadoma Haron that was so shaking as you hear him tell the story. Hey, once again, no sympathy points. He's saying to the crowd, I don't want the awe here. I just need to tell my story because we all go through it. And if not one of each stage, we will. But it was really depressed. It took me 48 hours to get out of bed. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I did not drink. I did nothing. At the end of the day, I ended up calling my brother, one of those normal conversations. I was speaking to him. And he was like, now he's sitting halfway across the globe, because his brother is working on the other side of the globe, and he's like, hey, how are you doing? And I didn't want to worry him at all, so I was like, oh, I'm doing perfectly fine. How are you? But we had this normal conversation, and we hung up. Exactly 23 hours and 47 minutes later, I get a call on my cell phone saying, dude, Pittsburgh, where Ohm is living, is effing cold. How do you live in this godforsaken place? I'm like, wait, where are you? Where are you? And he's like, stop talking and just come pick me up at the airport. I rush across traffic and I go to the airport and see this guy who's clad in jeans, blue jeans, and a shirt that says, the world's clowniest brother ever, which he made himself. The only thing he brought with him that day, but halfway across the globe, was his visa, his passport, 2 clown hats, 2 clown and 2 hats, 2 clown hats. And he tells me, I know it's really snowy out there, but how about we go and us 2 clowns have that piece of ice cream that we always wanted. As Harold Kushner said, when bad things happen to good people, so how do we show up on this Tisha b'Av as we feel the pain of our ancestors and ourselves from tragedy after tragedy, destruction after destruction, some brought by others, but some we've created ourselves? How do we show up for others even in the midst of our own pain? The story says it so beautifully, just a simple illustration to get us thinking and empower us. Chen, the chesed, the rachamim. Even if we can't offer tikkun or repair, even if you can't fix it or take away someone's pain, can we turn outward and respond to the brokenness with grace, with kindness and compassion? And what does it say in Sim Shalom? Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Kriya is about breaking things up, about the brokenness and the shards. What is Shalom? Shalom is everything coming together, wholeness, harmony, everything working in sync. And I like to think with his brother showing up, the pain wasn't going to go away, but they created something with that grace and kindness and compassion that was a type of shalom, something more than the sum of its parts. And so as I offer those words, that challenge for us with tefillah, tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, with chen and chesed and rachamim, sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out. How do we feel our pain? And then how do we respond to it in incredible ways? And I'm going to turn it back over to Rabbi Schicker one more time as we get that end of that beautiful end of Lamentations, which has that repetition. Don't end on a bad note, but let us find our ways to reconnect with the divine.
Ata Adonai leolam teshev kisach ledor vador. Lama lenetzach tishkachenu ta'azvenu leorach yamim. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadesh yamenu kekedem. Ki im maos maas tanu. Katsafta alenu ad meod. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadesh yamenu kekedem.
And I'm not sure if Rabbi Goldwasser will point it out, but if you look at the last line is, for truly you have rejected us, bitterly you raged against us. But what did the rabbis do? The rabbi said, don't end with that verse. Repeat the next to last verse, because we don't want to end with the bitterness. We always want to finish with that uplift, with that sweetness. We always want that hope at the end to keep us moving forward. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Goldwasser.
Welcome, everyone. Oh, am I reading this?
Yes.
Okay. Where are we now? Not in Babylon or Spain, not in Germany or even Russia. We are back in Jerusalem, not to rebuild a past we can never recreate or to yearn for a time when animal sacrifice still had meaning. What shall we build now? Not a structure of stone cut with the implements of war, not a city where divisions tear us apart and hatred burns away all the softness, but a temple of justice, a tent of meeting, a diversity of belonging, a home. My friends, I'm going to offer a final teaching for our study tonight, and it is a teaching that comes from a tradition about Tisha B'Av that you may know, or maybe not. It's a paradoxical teaching. There is the idea that Tisha B'Av, this day, this dark day, the black fast, ends with a bit of a nechemta. It ends with a comfort. And part of that comfort is the idea that when will the Messiah come? The Messiah will be born on no day other than Tisha B'Av. And that can seem very strange or at least paradoxical to us. Why of all days do we say that the Messiah is going to be born on Tisha B'Av? Well, I want to do a little exploration of some traditional Jewish texts to explore that. And I'm going to put them up on the screen. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. How's that? Can everyone see that clearly? Give me a thumbs up if that looks good. Thank you very much. Okay. So this is a teaching from the Jerusalem Talmud that says, Rabbi Yudan, the son of Rabbi Evu, said in the name of the Messiah to come will be Menachem. The name of the Messiah to come will be Menachem, the Hebrew word that means comforter. He said, it once happened to a Jew who was plowing in the valley of Arvel. And I'm going to take a moment here to move things a bit because I can't see what I'm reading. Oh, goodness. Where's my cursor? All right, I'll fake it. Here we go. The Jew was plowing in the valley of Arbel, and his oxen began to bellow. An Arab who was passing by heard the bellowing and said, Jew, Jew, unharness your ox, unfasten your plow, for the holy temple has been destroyed. The ox bellowed a second time, and the Arab said, Jew, Jew, harness your ox, refasten your plow, for the Messiah King has been born. And this teaching from the Jerusalem Talmud is taken as, is the source of this idea that the Messiah will be born on Tisha B'Av, the day of the destruction of the temple. The redemption of Israel and the world will sprout from the ruins of destruction. And we can meditate on that and think about, what is the meaning of that? Why would we have such a teaching that says that Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple, is in fact connected to the coming of the Messiah? So in order to explore that, I want to show you a verse from Psalm that will come up later in the next passage from Talmud we're going to look at. And you may know this verse. It's a verse that we actually include in Hallel. We recite on holidays. And the verse says, "Come, let us prostrate and kneel before Adonai, for this is our God, and we are the people God shepherds, the flock God tends. Today, if you would just listen to God's voice." Now that last phrase in the verse seems a little bit odd. It's saying, oh, we're going to bow down to God, and we're going to and we're going to be God's people, and God will care for us like a shepherd cares for sheep. But then at the very end of the verse, there's this seemingly disconnected phrase that says, "Today, if you would just listen to God's voice." The implication sort of being that in order for us to really have that relationship with God, where we are the flock that God tends, first we have to do something to listen to what God is telling us. But the promise is that if we do that, God will be present with us today, right now. And now I want to take a look at another Talmudic text. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, and it's a teaching that some of you may have seen before. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi found Elijah standing at the entrance of the burial cave of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So just do a little bit to unpack this. So why would he encounter Elijah? Elijah lived hundreds of years before the rabbis of the Talmud. Well, Elijah is a figure in Rabbinic Judaism who is the perpetual, the person who we always see as being the person who's the harbinger of the Messiah, the person who will come and announce that the Messiah is coming. But also Elijah is the keeper of divine secrets, the man who never really died, who ascended while he was still alive up into heaven. And when we have difficult questions that we want to have answered, Elijah is the figure who appears to answer unanswerable questions from beyond this world. And that's sort of the role he's playing in this fanciful legend from the Talmud. So he comes upon Elijah, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, and he's standing at the gravesite of this famous Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who's the star of the Zohar, great mystical teacher. And he said to him, Rabbi Yehoshua says to Elijah, "When will Messiah come?" Which is the kind of question that only Elijah can answer. And he said to him, well, go ask him. Meaning Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi should go ask the Messiah when he's planning on coming. But, that's the kind of answer that you're going to get from Elijah. And the rabbi says, well, where is he? And Elijah says to him, he's at the entrance of Rome. He asked, by what sign may I recognize him? Rome's a big city. He answered, he sits among the poor and those who suffer from illnesses. All of them untie their bandages to show their wounds, and then they tie them back up at the same time. Now, in order to get this, you have to know a little bit about how things worked in the ancient world. It was forbidden for people who had leprosy, the disease that we now call Hansen's disease, but we'll just leave it at leprosy for now. It was forbidden for people who had leprosy to enter into the city. Why? Because people thought that leprosy was a highly communicable disease and that other people would get sick. And so what you had in ancient Rome was at the city gates, there were these lepers sitting, and they would spend all day sitting there as people went in and out of the city, and they would open up their clothes and undo the bandages of their wounds to display their wounds, so people would take pity on them and give them money or give them food. Something like that happens in the world still today. And so here's the idea, is that where is the Messiah in the world today? The Messiah is among the lepers who are sitting outside the city of Rome. And only the only difference between the Messiah and the other lepers sitting there is only the Messiah unties only one of his bandages and then puts it right back on. He doesn't open all of his bandages all at once because he, the Messiah, thinks to himself, perhaps I will be needed, so I will untie only one at a time so that I will not be delayed. So we have this image of the Messiah, of anxiously awaiting the moment which should come at any second when he will be called forward to enter into the world and bring about the world's redemption. But where he's doing it, he's not a general sitting on a horse waiting to ride in triumph. He's not a military leader. He's a leper sitting where? At the entrance of the city, which represents everything that the rabbis considered to be evil. He is a person in the deepest kind of distress that's possible, sitting in the most evil place possible. Rabbi Yehoshua went to the Messiah and said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi and my teacher," because how else do you greet the Messiah? And the Messiah said to him, "Greetings to you, son of Levi," recognizing him, calling him by his name or by his father's name. He said to him, the Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, "When will the master come?" The Messiah said to him, "Today." Sometime later, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi encountered Elijah again. He said to him, "What did the Messiah say to you when you asked, when is the Messiah coming?" He said, "Greetings," the Hebrew word shalom, "to you, son of Levi." And Elijah said to him, he thereby guaranteed that you and your father will enter the world to come, as he greeted you with shalom. Since the Messiah, who knows all things, wished shalom, wholeness, peace, completion upon him, and he called him by the name of his father, son of Levi. That's a great thing that you got there. The Messiah himself has told you that you will have a portion in the world to come, and so will your father. He said to him, though, Rabbi Yehoshua said to Elijah, "The Messiah lied to me, as he said to me, 'I am coming today,' but he did not come." And Elijah said to him, "This is what he said to you. He said that he will come today if you would just listen to God's voice," quoting the Psalm. Why do I bring this as a teaching for Tisha b'Av? If Tisha b'Av is, as the Jerusalem Talmud says, the day that will bring about the redemption of the world, that the Messiah will be born on no day but on Tisha b'Av, here we have a teaching that reminds us that the possibility of the world's redemption exists in every moment. And the Messiah himself said so. The Messiah, when asked, "When are you coming?" said, "Oh, today." If you'll listen, if you're ready, the possibility of the world's redemption exists in every moment. And particularly on Tisha b'Av, particularly on the day when we are so acutely aware of our suffering, when we are so acutely aware of the very brokenness of the world. It is in that exact moment that we can have the awareness of we can't just continue our lives the way they've been. We can't continue to live in a world that is so broken and not do something that is in response to that brokenness. It's only in the moment of our deepest despair, when we are standing at the gates of the most heinous evil imaginable and filled with the most terrible suffering imaginable, that we will turn our hearts and say, today is the day I'm going to do something about it. Today is the day that I am finally going to listen to what God is telling me and help to build a world as it is supposed to be. And that is the reason why the Messiah will be born on no day other than Tisha b'Av. Just like someone who is in the grips of addiction, who has to reach the bottom of the barrel, who has to be in the place of greatest torment, pain, and suffering before he or she is able to turn his or her life around and climb back up out and make the determination that they wish to live more than anything else. That's us. That's us every day. And it's only when we are open to an awareness of how broken the world is on a day like Tisha B'Av that we can summon within us the courage to actually listen to what God is telling us. And that will be the day that the Messiah is born. Thanks all very much.
I have journeyed to a place of great sorrow, and there did I cry from the very depths of my soul. For you thought I might never return, but I've come back to you, stronger, richer, with greater knowledge of myself. The crack in my heart will remain forever, its purpose no longer to let grief out, but to let a greater love in. So we hear those beautiful words from Rabbi Goldwasser, from all of my colleagues. We started our service as we extinguished a candle of Havdalah to end Shabbat. We turn to this day of Tisha B'Av. It is custom to light a Yizkor candle on these special days of memory, to restore the lights of those whose lives have been destroyed in this day of Jewish tragedy, if even but for a second. We now each light a symbolic memorial candle to bring light to us at this moment of prayer, meditation, and memory, to recognize those victims of intolerance and hatred who have no one to remember them. And so I give you an opportunity now. If you want to just turn on a cell phone, you can. If you have a candle to kindle, you can. And of course, I'm the one who came up with this, and I'm going to struggle. And I have a flashlight. Yeah, we. And I invite those who are with me in this room to read together. Not every day do we encounter God. Not every time is opportune for prayer. Not every hour one of grace. We fail and fail again till journey's end. We turn back only to lose our way once more and grope in search of long forgotten paths. But God, holding a candle, looks for all who wander, for all who search. Light is our gateway. It's the light of creation. We kindle lights. We remember the light that marked the beginning of the universe, the first flashes of lightning that filled the sky when we received Torah at Mount Sinai, the sparks of God's holy presence that united when we find redemption together. As our communities engage together, we take this time to reflect and study and learn together. Let us consider the ways that we seek out God's light, allowing it to shine into a better world. Beit Yaakov lechuven el Chaba or Adonai, O house of Jacob, come let us walk by the light of our God. And as I ask Helene to turn out the lights here, I'm going to turn the spotlight, share the spotlight with Rabbi Neal Katz.
Adonai oz lehamo yiten, Adonai oz lehamo yiten, Adonai oz lehamo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai oz lehamo yiten, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. V'shalom. May the Holy One of Blessing give us strength and bring strength to the people of Israel so that we can come together with God and all humanity to build a world where tragedy and destruction vanish, a world of wholeness and a world of completeness. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo.
And so a tremendous thank you to everyone for joining us. And even as we have all of these flames lit, even in the midst of darkness, as Tisha b'Av continues now, this is really the beginning of it, and will continue for the next 24 hours or so. Some will fast and some of us will not, but may all of us, and some of us will say additional prayers of loss and memory, and some of us will continue to move forward. But may we all just remember this hour and a half that we just spent with each other, this time of learning, this time of hearing the words of our tradition. Thank you to all of my rabbinic colleagues. That was truly incredible to hear all of our different approaches to this day, and to hear the voices of singing, and even just to realize that you don't know that even behind the scenes we were helping and supporting each other, that we, as we said, from California to Massachusetts to New Zealand to Florida, we had people from all over the country joining us for this. How wonderful it is, even as painful and as difficult as Tisha b'Av is, we came together to share this incredible light. And with that, I say amen. And I